Hey, this is Trevor, and I want to talk to you about this giant orange rocket you may have seen in the news a lot lately. You're going to hear a lot more about it, so I want to make sure you know all about it. This is NASA's SLS, or Space Launch System rocket. And this is basically our ticket to getting back to the moon in this decade. And there's a big mission coming up for it. It's called Artemis 1, and it could launch as soon as late August. That's next month. Basically, in Artemis 1, the mission is to launch with no crew on it, go around the moon, orbit the moon once, and then come back to Earth. It'll take about 3 weeks, and as I said, there'll be no people on it, but future missions will. I think it's hard to understand how big the SLS rocket is unless you're sitting right beside it, which I am not, but I kinda am. This is the Air Transat building on Park Ave here in Montreal, and this building is 94 meters tall, and the SLS rocket is actually a little bit taller than this at 98 meters. And looking up at the base of this building and trying to imagine that this is basically the size of a controlled explosion, it's kind of mind-boggling. If you're not in Montreal and you don't have an Air Transat building next to you, I've got some other buildings around Canada that you might be able to use to give you a sense of how big the SLS rocket is. If you're in Toronto, the Sterling Building on Bay Street. If you're in Vancouver, the HSBC Building. Edmonton, the Oxford Tower. Winnipeg, the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. Halifax, Fenwick Tower. And if for some reason you're in Ottawa, the SLS rocket is the same height as the Parliament Building. I said that Artemis 1 will have no people on it. It'll be an uncrewed mission. But Artemis 2, which is supposed to launch in 2024, that will have crew on it. It will have 4 people on it, including 1 Canadian. Right now in Canada, we have 4 active astronauts: David, Jeremy, Joshua, and Jenny. Now, we sent Canadians to space, of course. Just a few years ago, we sent David St. Jacques to the ISS for about 6 months. But one of these 4 people will go 1,000 times farther than the ISS. Now, here's an odd thing. Only American men have been to the moon. That's the only nation that's been outside of Earth's orbit. And in just a few short years, Canada will be the 2nd country to send people beyond Earth. And I've had this thought for a few years now, that the moon is going to start to look different. Not in a physical way, but in the way that we perceive it as a culture. I've always wondered what it must have been like to have watched the first steps on the moon on TV in July 1969. And then afterwards, head outside, look west, and see the moon up there in the sky, and then look at it and think to yourself, wow, there are human beings walking on the surface of the moon. I have to imagine it must feel the same way. You look at a building differently after a tightrope walker has walked across it. The last time a human walked and orbited around the moon was in December 1972, and that's almost 50 years ago now. What that means is nobody under the age of 50 has ever looked up at the moon while people have either walked or orbited around the moon. For every 4 people that are currently alive, 3 of those people haven't witnessed that. And we're just on the horizon of that happening again. And I wonder how we're going to look at the moon knowing that there's celestial tightrope walkers upon it. Thank you for watching.